November 1943, above the churning grey moor of the English Channel. Altitude 28,000 feet. Speed 380 miles per hour. The cold is absolute, a relentless, bone-deep ache that even the thickest flight suit cannot entirely repel. It is a world of pure function, framed by perspex and aluminum. The cockpit of a Lockheed P-38 Lightning, specifically the F-5B variant. This is not a fighter. It is a camera platform, a technological spy, stripped of armament and armed only with 5 specialized K-17 aerial mapping cameras and raw speed. Lieutenant Silas "Spectre" Vance, fresh out of the training fields of Arizona, is its solitary occupant. He is a ghost pilot flying alone deep into the European fortress. Vance's machine is a paradox, sleek, powerful, nicknamed the fork-tailed devil by the Germans for its distinctive silhouette. But its very nature as a reconnaissance bird makes it desperately vulnerable. Without guns, every flicker of movement below, a smudge of smoke, a distant glint of light, is a potential predator. His survival depends on 2 things: the unparalleled speed of his twin Allison V1710 engines, and the belief that no fighter can possibly catch him at this altitude, in this weather. It is a gamble, one taken dozens of times a week by the nascent American aerial surveillance arm. The mission today is not glamorous, documenting rail marshalling yards near Rennes deep in Brittany. The purpose is mundane, to confirm the flow of panzer divisions, but the risk is existential. Vance grips the yoke, his eyes scanning the impossible horizon. He knows that down below, the German flak batteries, the 88 88mm guns, are tracking him, their electronic ears straining to pick up the signature of his engines. These gunners are not novices. They are industrialized killers, capable of raining down shrapnel over a 6-mile column of air. A single misplaced shell, a tiny sliver of metal, could end the mission, and the man. The irony of the F-5B is profound. It is the ultimate tool of impersonal intelligence, capturing the grand sweep of industrial-scale warfare. Yet, its operator is utterly, terrifyingly alone, a single point of fragile life in a vast, hostile sky. The psychological burden of this solitude is immense. Every successful sortie provides crucial data that determines the fate of entire armies, the launching of massive bomber raids, the very shape of the war to come. Vance is not a killer, but his information is lethal. As he makes his final high-speed run over the target, the cameras whirring like furious clockwork, he dips a wing over the heavily contested coastline. The air is thick with tension. It is here, just over the boundary of occupied France and the pastoral fields of southern England, that he catches a flash of color, an anomaly in the monotonous green and brown checkerboard below. It's an isolated, fallow field, far from any obvious military target or village. And there, carved roughly into the newly ploughed earth, is a message so audacious, so raw in its despair, that it snaps him out of his strategic focus. It is simple, crude, yet impossible to ignore. HELPUS. This is not standard resistance signaling. It is not an encoded message for London. It is a scream in the wilderness. Vance's heart pounds against his ribs. The rules are absolute. Maintain radio silence, do not deviate from the flight plan, and prioritize the intelligence package. He has critical film that must reach headquarters. But the sight of those massive, desperate letters, visible only from his unique vantage point, burns itself into his mind. It poses the central, agonizing question of the entire war. In the face of industrial death, what is the moral weight of one single, desperate plea for life? He records the coordinates, banks hard, and points the nose back towards the safety of the British mainland. The image of the sprawling plea, a new, unauthorized piece of intelligence he must now carry. The war just got personal. If you want to follow the dramatic journey of pilots like Silas Vance and discover the hidden stories of World War II's unsung heroes, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The true history is often found in the small, desperate choices. The debriefing room at RAF Mount Farm is a sterile crucible of intelligence. Here, photographs are not merely pictures, they are the raw material of global strategy. Vance's film rolls are immediately sent to the Photographic Interpretation PI Center, where teams of WAAFs, Women's Auxiliary Air Force, and veteran analysts pore over the minutiae, armed with stereoscopes and precise scale rules. They are looking for the truth hidden in the shadows. New V-weapon sights, U-boat pens, changes in camouflage netting. The scale of this operation is staggering. A single mission like Vance's could generate thousands of photographs, each needing meticulous scrutiny. Vance, however, has a secret image that no one has asked for, a burden of conscience that outweighs the military importance of the entire Rennes rail yard. He makes no mention of the field message in his official report. The rules of engagement are clear. Deviation from mission parameters is a serious offense, particularly for an F-5B pilot whose singular value lies in the safe return of the film. Reporting a non-military, highly suspicious civilian distress signal in occupied territory would invite interrogation, potentially compromise his operational status, and worse, lead to a massive, politically sensitive, and likely futile rescue operation. The emotional contrast between the technological efficiency of the base and the visceral reality of the plea is stark. Outside, the P-38s are meticulously maintained by ground crews who treat every rivet and wire with religious devotion. Inside, Vance feels the weight of the war's hypocrisy. They are fighting for freedom, yet they must ignore the immediate visible suffering of those they are meant to liberate. He consults with his only confidant, Sergeant Mac McDougall, the head of his ground crew. Mac, a pragmatic veteran of the British desert campaigns, looks at the crude sketch Vance drew of the field and the message. McDougall's reaction is cold realism. Silas, it's a trap. The Gestapo are not subtle, but they are patient. They use bait. You land that bird, you're not helping them, you're joining them. This assessment, based on the brutal experience of espionage and counter-espionage, is highly probable. The German Security Service, SD, was notorious for using psychological warfare and false flags to lure Allied agents and resistance fighters. The technical specifications of the P-38 itself make a stealth landing nearly impossible. The F-5B requires a long, unobstructed runway. Attempting to land it on a small, uneven, ploughed field, a short field landing, is a nearly suicidal maneuver, risking catastrophic structural failure and the loss of a multi-million-dollar asset. Furthermore, the noise footprint of the twin-engine fighter is enormous. The sound of a P-38 landing would carry for miles, instantly alerting any nearby Wehrmacht or SD patrols. The choice is stark: uphold the mission, or risk everything for a ghost of a chance. Vance's internal conflict is the core of this act. The military machine demands clinical detachment. His human core demands action. He researches the area using old archived farming surveys. A subtle request slipped into the PI workflow. He discovers the field belongs to a small, historically isolated farmstead, the property of a family named Dubois, known locally for their taciturnity. This isolation, he realizes, could either be a sign of security or a sign of preemptive isolation enforced by the Germans. He makes his decision. He will run the mission again 2 days later under the pretense of checking a secondary target of interest. He has filed the false flight plan, and the only other living creature going with him is his unofficial, highly trained border collie, Buster, a dog that has been with him since his arrival in England and which he often sneaks onto his flights to alleviate the crushing loneliness of high-altitude reconnaissance. Buster, a quiet, keenly perceptive companion, represents the last vestige of Vance's normal pre-war life. The machine is ready. The man is ready. The plan is irrational yet unavoidable. The descent into the unknown is about to begin. The morning of the unscheduled sortie dawns with a low ceiling and a persistent drizzle, perfect weather for a discreet, unauthorized operation. Vance uses the heavy cloud cover as his shield, flying lower than usual, risking visual contact with flak towers. His official target is 30 miles past the real point of interest. The journey over the channel is fraught with technical anxiety. The P-38's high wing loading makes low-altitude, high-speed flight through choppy air turbulence a physically punishing experience. He runs the engines harder than specified, burning fuel at an exponential rate, a desperate bid to shave minutes off the exposure time. The fuel gauge is no longer a tool for planning. It is a ticking clock, a constant visual reminder of the thin margin for error. Reaching the pre-calculated coordinates, Vance begins his perilous descent. The ground is rushing up, a dangerous tapestry of hedgerows, trees, and power lines. He reduces power drastically, drops the landing gear, and flaps. a noisy, jarring mechanical process that instantly alerts anyone within a 2-mile radius. The plane shudders, fighting the drag. His speed drops to a frightening 110 knots, barely above the stall speed for the heavy aircraft. The landing is a masterpiece of desperation. The plowed earth is soft and grabs the tires, creating enormous drag. The plane skids violently, throwing Vance against his harnesses. The twin booms clip the branches of an old oak at the field's end. A blinding flash of sparks, a sickening, metallic shriek. But they stop. The P-38 is technically intact, but the undercarriage is likely damaged, and the landing field is now a disaster zone, 2 distinct parallel tracks scoring the mud. The silence that follows the screaming engines is deafening, punctuated only by the metallic pings of the cooling engines. Vance cuts the magnetos, unstraps himself and grabs his survival kit, his service pistol and a small shovel. He releases Buster, who, despite the violent landing, remains stoically composed. The dog is an extension of Vance's own vigilance. Buster, find it. The dog, accustomed to tracking and searching on the base, immediately begins sniffing the message carved in the earth. The letters, Vance realizes, are not perfectly formed. They look hastily scraped by a small, thin implement. He studies the perimeter. The field is bordered by a thick, high hedgerow on one side and an overgrown orchard on the other. He is exposed. He has maybe 30 minutes before the inevitable German patrol arrives, drawn by the sound of the crash landing. Buster, ignoring the actual trenches of the message, begins to pull towards the far corner of the field, near the oldest, thickest part of the hedgerow. The dog is not tracking a person who walked across the field. He is tracking a scent that leads under the ground. Vance rushes over, heart pounding in his throat. The dog is frantically digging at a clump of ivy and brambles. Using the small shovel and his hands, Vance rips away the heavy vegetation. Beneath it, cleverly concealed by a layer of earth and dead leaves, is a slab of rough-cut slate. It is a hatch. Not a professional military bunker entrance, but a desperate civilian attempt at concealment. A wave of historical irony washes over him. The world's most advanced technological spy plane has been grounded by a simple, secret farmhouse cellar. He lifts the slate. The smell of damp earth and stale air rushes out. Below, he sees a set of rough-hewn wooden steps leading into the darkness. He drops his survival pack. He is no longer a pilot on a mission of intelligence. He is now an invader, standing on the threshold of a secret world, a world he has just violently exposed. The suspense is unbearable. He is about to learn who sent the message and why they risked execution to send it. Vance descends into the darkness, Buster quietly padding down the steps behind him. The space is not a cellar designed for wine or potatoes. It is a painstakingly excavated small chamber, perhaps 10 feet by 10 feet, shored up with old timber and concrete rubble. The air is heavy and the only light comes from the shaft he has just opened. The engineering is amateur, but the commitment to survival is evident in every detail. As his eyes adjust, he sees them. A family. An elderly woman, Madame Dubois, her face a map of worry and endurance, holding a small hand-painted wooden sign. A man, her son, perhaps in his late 20s, thin and pale, gripping a rusted iron poker. And 2 small children, a boy and a girl huddled against the wall, their eyes wide with fear and relief. The man, Pierre Dubois, speaks first, his voice a dry rasp of disuse. "You came. You actually came." He speaks English with a heavy French accent. Vance, still catching his breath, holsters his pistol. He explains his situation quickly, omitting the unauthorized nature of the landing. "I am Lieutenant Vance. I saw the message. Your field. My plane is damaged. We have 30 minutes. Who are you hiding? Why the message?" Pierre points not to his mother nor his children, but to a small hidden alcove behind a curtain of old burlap sacks. He pulls the curtain aside. Inside the tiny space are 2 figures. The first is a young, beautiful woman who looks at Vance with deep, grateful exhaustion. The second is an American paratrooper, his uniform ragged, his leg encased in a makeshift splint. He is a stick casualty, dropped in the wrong zone during a secret OSS insertion 3 weeks prior. His name is Private First Class Thomas "Tommy" Riley. This is the true irony. Vance, the high-flying photographic spy, has rescued a low-crawling infantry spy. The Dubois family, far from being resistance agents, are simple farmers who found a wounded man and chose moral obligation over mortal safety. Madame Dubois explains that they could not risk a radio transmission, nor could they afford to feed and medically stabilize Riley indefinitely. The message, scraped into the field on a moonless night, was Madame Dubois' idea, a final, desperate roll of the dice. She calculated that only a high-flying reconnaissance bird would see it before rain or plowing destroyed it. Vance realizes the scale of the danger. Hiding an Allied soldier is an act of war, punishable by immediate execution for the entire family under Field Marshal Keitel's Nacht und Nebel, night and fog decree. They have been living in this dark, silent tomb for 21 days, relying on the goodwill of an entire chain of neighbors who must have known something was amiss. The terror is not an abstract concept, it is the stagnant air they breathe. The immediate crisis is the plane. Vance and Pierre climb back up to assess the damage. The front wheel assembly is likely twisted beyond immediate repair, and the twin propellers are dangerously close to the turf. They cannot fix it. They cannot fly out. The only option is to attempt a desperate evacuation. One pilot, one wounded paratrooper, one family of 4. Just as they are discussing the impossible logistics, they hear it. The unmistakable rhythmic tread of boots on the muddy track road. The deep, guttural sound of a German patrol truck downshifting. The suspense is absolute. The technological marvel that brought Vance here, the P-38, is now a gigantic chrome-plated trap, a beacon marking their immediate location for the enemy. They must disappear. Now. The appearance of the German patrol instantly shifts the emotional dynamics of the cellar. The fear that had been latent in the Dubois family now becomes a focused, adrenaline-fueled determination. "The old mill," whispers Pierre, grabbing a heavy oil lantern. 3 miles west. The tunnel. Vance understands immediately. This isn't just a simple hiding place. It's a link in a deep-rooted regional escape network. He helps Riley, the wounded paratrooper, out of the alcove. Riley is in agony, but his military training takes over. Madame Dubois quickly organizes the small family, stuffing dried rations and a few precious photographs into a canvas bag. She is a woman transformed, from desperate civilian to capable resistance partner. The German patrol is closing in. They can hear the shouts and the clanging of equipment as the soldiers begin to inspect the immediate vicinity of the field. Vance looks at his P-38, the magnificent war machine, now a useless, expensive piece of scrap metal. He cannot allow the Germans to capture the cameras and the sophisticated navigation equipment. "We have to disable the plane," Vance instructs Pierre. "Do you have explosives, even demolition charges?" Pierre shakes his head. "Only dynamite for stump removal, hidden under the chicken coop." Vance has his service pistol, a few well-aimed shots at the Allison engine manifolds, and the vital hydraulic lines might suffice, but it would be too loud. The plan is refined. They will use the plane as a decoy. Vance retrieves an empty fuel canister and soaks a rag in 100-octane aviation fuel, placing it near the wing root. If he can draw the patrol into the cellar, they can gain precious minutes. He assigns Riley, despite his injury, the task of setting the plane alight after the patrol has entered the field, using a cigarette lighter. The smoke will buy them cover. Vance, Pierre, and Buster lead the children and Madame Dubois out the back of the orchard, utilizing a hidden cattle track that runs parallel to the main road. The technical detail here is crucial. The high-performance aviation fuel, designed for maximum energy, will burn with extraordinary intensity, producing a black, choking column of smoke visible for miles. It will draw attention, but it will also signify a successful kill for the German patrol, reducing the urgency of a follow-up search. As they move through the dense, wet undergrowth, the small group embodies the total reality of the French underground. They are no longer isolated. They are connected by a network of paths, safe houses, and coded local knowledge. This is the truth of the resistance. Not grand military maneuvers, but endless, terrifying inches of movement, facilitated by the moral courage of ordinary people. Suddenly Buster halts, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Vance pulls the dog back just as a German soldier, separated from the main patrol, walks past their hiding spot, his rifle slung carelessly over his shoulder. The soldier is looking at the path of the downed plane, distracted. The tension is excruciating. Vance raises his pistol, the safety click barely audible. He realizes that he is about to become a killer, not a spotter, but the soldier moves on, drawn by the sound of his comrades. They are safe for now. They reach the edge of the field, looking back. They hear a muffled sound, and then, a heartbeat later, a massive, roaring whoosh. Riley has executed the mission. A towering column of black smoke begins to billow over the trees, a funeral pyre for the magnificent P-38. The pilot is gone. The spy plane is dead. The chase is on. The journey to the old mill is a race against time, a brutal physical trial that contrasts sharply with the high-altitude serenity of Vance's previous life. Carrying Riley, even with Pierre's help, slows them down considerably. The children, initially terrified, are now moving with the silent, practiced efficiency of those accustomed to life under an iron fist. The technical significance of the tunnel is revealed. It is not an actual underground passage, but a disused, overgrown Roman-era aqueduct that runs for almost half a mile beneath a stretch of low-lying farmland and connects to the foundations of the old mill. The stone construction is sturdy, providing absolute concealment from both German eyes and the rapidly spreading search parties. As they stumble into the relative safety of the tunnel's entrance, the darkness is overwhelming, but the relief is palpable. Pierre produces a small, powerful flashlight, a vital, illegal piece of contraband, and illuminates the damp, low-ceilinged passage. They are safe from immediate detection, but the aqueduct presents a new logistical problem. It is partially flooded, the water ankle-deep and freezing. Hypothermia is now a very real threat, particularly for the already injured Riley. Inside the tunnel, they share a moment of true human connection. Vance and Riley, two strangers from America, connected by fate, share a silent nod of mutual respect. Madame Dubois opens her canvas bag and distributes small portions of dry cheese and bread. It is a communion of the desperate. Vance, the expert in grand strategy, begins to interrogate Riley about his intelligence. Riley, despite his pain, is lucid. He was sent to confirm a critical piece of counterintelligence, a highly accurate, new German radar system. The Würzburg-Riese was being deployed near the Pas-de-Calais, far earlier than Allied High Command anticipated. This system, if operational, could severely compromise the upcoming long-range bomber raids, making the already dangerous daylight missions essentially suicidal. The irony is profound. Vance's initial photographs of the rail yard were important, but Riley's 3-week-old ground-level information is now critically time-sensitive. The fate of hundreds of heavy bombers and thousands of American and British airmen hangs on their ability to transmit this single piece of data. The scale of the human stakes has just exploded. The survival of 6 individuals has become inextricably linked to the survival of the entire Allied bomber force. As they emerge from the far end of the aqueduct, they are inside the crumbling walls of the old mill. A prearranged signal, 3 stacks of cut firewood, an agricultural commonplace, tells Pierre that the network is active. Within minutes, a contact arrives. A young man dressed as a miller, riding a bicycle. He doesn't speak. He simply hands Pierre a small sealed bottle and takes the children and Madame Dubois into the back of the mill. They are being dispersed to various safe houses. The risk is shared, the security dispersed. The miller, communicating in gestures, indicates that he can take Vance and Riley to a coastal pickup point, a small fishing village 60 miles away, but they must move now, under the cover of the heavy rain. Vance takes a moment to look at Buster, who has been faithfully shadowing him, silent and alert. He knows the dog cannot make this journey on a bicycle and through heavily monitored checkpoints. He hands the miller the only item of value he possesses, his grandfather's gold signet ring. "Take care of him. If I don't return, find the address on this envelope and send him there." Buster gives one final low whimper. The hardest act of the entire war is saying goodbye to the last link to home. The 2 men, 1 pilot, 1 paratrooper, leave the mill and step into the pouring rain, trusting their lives to a stranger and the intricate, invisible architecture of the French resistance. The 60-mile bicycle journey is a torturous blend of suspense and physical pain. They travel only under the deepest cover of night and fog, sticking to minor rural roads, often forced to hide in drainage ditches as German convoys rumble past. Riley's leg injury is worsening. a constant throbbing distraction. Vance's paranoia is total. Every shadow is a patrol, every light a watchtower. They reach the fishing village of Port-en-Bessin 2 nights later, exhausted and near collapse. The final leg of the escape is a classic clandestine operation. A small motorized fishing trawler, ostensibly heading out for the daily catch, is the extraction vehicle. The technical detail here is the Hedgehog Protocol. The British coastal patrols, using radar systems designed specifically to ignore the low signature of small fishing vessels, would not engage them until they crossed the established 12-mile offshore limit. The moment they step onto the deck, they are in the hands of the Royal Navy. The feeling of safety is immediate, a massive, overwhelming wave of relief after days of acute psychological terror. Back in England, the aftermath is swift. Vance and Riley are rushed to military intelligence MI6. Riley's report on the Würzburg-Riesa radar near Pas-de-Calais is the single most important piece of intelligence received that week. It allows the Allied strategic planners to immediately implement Operation Gimlet, a series of coordinated fighter sweeps designed to specifically target and disrupt the deployment of the new radar sites before they become fully operational. The pilots and air crews of the 8th Air Force are unknowingly saved from a catastrophic increase in casualties, all thanks to a message scraped in the mud. Vance, however, faces a court-martial for the unauthorized landing and the loss of a valuable P-38. The historical irony is the ultimate climax of the story. He is reprimanded, grounded for 2 months, and fined for the technical breach of discipline. Yet he is simultaneously awarded the Silver Star for exceptional valor in securing vital intelligence and aiding a wounded comrade behind enemy lines. He is the only man in the theater to be reprimanded and highly decorated for the exact same set of actions. 2 months later, Vance is back in the air, flying a new upgraded F-5E. His perspective has shifted irrevocably. He still sees the grand strategic tapestry, the industrial scale of the war captured on his film. But now he is forever tethered to the individual, the human element, the Dubois family's courage. The ultimate legacy of the mission is quietly delivered 6 months later. A package arrives at his barracks, a collar, an old ball, and a letter. The letter is from Madame Dubois, translated by the Resistance Network. It explains that the miller, having cared for Buster, secured a transit route for the dog to a relative in Spain. Now, with the tide turning, they have risked sending him back. Buster is waiting at the address he provided. The ghost pilot, the man who saw the war from 28,000 feet, finally lands and finds his heart back on solid ground. The message in the field was not just "help us," it was a command to remember that the objective of the war was not the destruction of machines, but the preservation of people. The true victory, the one that truly mattered, was not the destruction of a rail yard, but the safe return of a good dog. The P-38 became scrap. The Würzburg-Riesa was neutralized. The Dubois family survived the war. And Lieutenant Silas Vance, the reprimanded hero, understood the deepest truth of the conflict. Technology may win the battle, but human decency wins the war. Did this intense journey into the heart of the resistance and the ethical conflict of a wartime pilot keep you on the edge of your seat? If you appreciate documentaries that blend historical accuracy with compelling human drama, please like this video, share it, and hit the subscribe button. We will continue to uncover the hidden stories and technological battles that defined the Second World War.